Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Today we are going to almost complete the topic that for the last, I think, 2-3 lectures we are trying to scan a kind of history of Quran translation into English language. So in this lecture, which is entitled as More on English Translations of Quran, we shall be discussing these three major points. Number one, recent translations, but they are not online. Number two, the feminist Quran, that is the translated by women, but the meaning of feminist we will discuss when we reach this second point. And the last, the most contested verse in the Quran and how it has been translated into English. As for the recent translations, but they are not available online, here we are going to introduce 7 Quran translations. They are the Quran, a new translation by Thomas Cleary, which was published in 2004. The Quran by Alan Jones, published in 2007. What is in the Quran? Message of the Quran in Simple English by Abdurrahman Kidwai, published in 2013. The Quran, a new annotated translation by A.J. Droge. Number 5, the Quran, the final book of God, a clear English translation of the glorious Quran by William Dewood Peachy and Mane al-Johani, and we shall use Peachy and Johani in short. Number 6, the study of Quran by Hussein Nasr, with 15 different scholars. Some of the names appear here in this slide, which was published in 2015. The Quran by Jane McAuliffe, we have discussed this scholar earlier when we discussed the Pickthall translation in our previous lectures, and this translation was published 2017. Let's take the first one. Of course, this is the 7th one, that is McAuliffe, and the first one, as we have seen in the list, the Quran, a new translation by Thomas Cleary. Thomas Cleary is an author and translator of more than 80 books, but he is very versatile, scholar and translator. He has translated mostly the religious text from these languages, from Pali, Sanskrit, Arabic, Japanese, classic Chinese, and Old Irish into English. He was a gem of a person, who could translate from these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 languages. The 8th one is the English, which is of course his native language. This translation is based on an earlier partial translation which was done in 1993, of course, he himself, but could not complete. Highly praised by American Muslim scholar Hamza Yusuf. Hamza Yusuf is American convert Muslim, and he has studied the traditional Islamic education, and he is very much promoter of the traditional education and established Islamic schools, Islamic institutions in America and some other European countries. So he has praised this translation for its different features. This work is considered exceptional work in terms of two things. That is the the brevity, we can call this, or minimalism, and creativity. I mean, using the shortest possible style, structure, or sentences to translate the Quranic text, and of course using the creativity. Sandow has also included for his translation of hybrid version of Quran entitled American Quran. This Sandow's translation is very interesting one, and it is my wish that we could have a separate lecture on Sandow Bigg's translation, because Sandow Big is an American, basically visual artist, and whose interest is of course in creating artistic work for different purposes, and his main purposes are the socio-political issues and the American foreign policy and American, of course, policies towards the weaker nations and so on and so forth. From that aspect, being an artist, he does not know Arabic language. He actually relied on various Quran translations already available, and of course combined different, selected, of course, up to his own understanding different translations and prepared this one translation. But the uniqueness of Sandow's book is very interesting, and I would like to just mention two three things, because as I said, it needs a complete lecture and very interesting work. Number one, as an artist, he used handwritten script. He actually wrote it, and handwritten means he created a font in his hand, and of course used the technology for that, which is after studying the manuscripts of Arabic scripts throughout the history. He traveled in many Muslim countries. He visited a lot of libraries where those who have the different manuscripts of Quran throughout the histories, especially one of the famous libraries in Dublin, and also of course he visited many Muslim countries to keenly see the manuscript. This is one. Second thing is that he used different colors and illuminated, of course, the translation with the pictures of the modern American life to relate, or to at least create a kind of coexistence between the Quranic teachings and the modern Arabic of the American life. That is why he has called his work American Quran. And his purpose is to this translation was published in 2009, and he spent almost 10 years in preparing this translation. Anyways, the point here is that the Sandow also benefited from Thomas Cleary translation for preparing his own translation. The second work, or the second translation in under this category, is the Quran by Alan Jones, as professor of classical Arabic at the University of Oxford, a leading authority on early classical Arabic poetry, author of publications on Arabic literature. So that is the standing of this scholar. And of course, when he translated, he brought a very interesting approach. So his approach is based on highlighting the oral or aural structure of Quranic, how it is recited and how it was heard by its first audience. And there was of course the Bedouin Arabs, for which the Quran was basically revealed, and they were the first addressee of the Quran. So he made these two very important things in his approach. So given special thought to what the text would have meant to its first hearer. Again, it's a kind of explanation of the point aural, A-U-R-A-L. And also he gave very keen interest toward the verses indicating the natural points for pause and imitating its rhythmic cadences when recited. Again, how it was recited, and then where are the pauses, and what kind of the rhythmic cadences that can occur during this recitation. These are the very positive aspects as for the Muslims are concerned. But one thing actually marginalized this work is he has compromised on his polemical tone and open critic. That's why this translation is not very much welcome in the Muslim among the Muslim readers, because his views are very hostile, not very friendly or sympathetic with Islam. That's the negative aspect. I have given just two quick examples to explain the oral origin and the meaning of the text to its first hearer. For example, he translated the word Iqra as recite, whereas the regional or the most appropriate meaning of Iqra is read and not recite. But because he visualized, or because he went into the origin or the original audience, so he saw this word, because this text was recited among the people and not read, the meaning that we take nowadays, or actually is meant by reading something written and we read it. So he has actually differentiated between this and that, because the tradition was that, and this is very much true historically. Another example of how the first hearer understood the meaning of the Quran. He has translated the word ummiyun which is predominantly means the illiterate or people who are not formally educated, but he has translated this word with members of the community, common people, those for which the Quran is Quran is recited and of course is presented orally to these people. So the members of the community, members of basically in the beginning the Meccan people, and then of course the people of Arabian Peninsula. Third work is What is in the Quran? Message of the Quran in Simple English, which was published in 2013. You can see the title is little longer, but anyways, this is the translator's choice. And this work is translated by Abdul Rahman Kidwai, a famous scholar in the area of Quran and Quranic studies and Quran translation. He is professor of the English department of Aligarh Muslim University. In addition to his work on Quran translation, he has produced a very good evaluation of 64 translations into English, and that is available online, of course, in this website that is written in front of you. So the work is published in India, one of the most prolific and insightful, but not available online. So he has actually spent a lot of time and his energy. Of course, this is his core area. He spent whole of his life in serving the Quranic studies in Quran, especially the Quranic translation. Number fourth is the Quran, a new annotated translation by A.J. Droge, which was published again 2013. And this translation or this work actually is more valued for its annotation than for its translation or rendition of Arabic into English, because the annotation, they are key to the text. They are matched to the text and divided according to their bold-faced topical headings at the bottom of each. This is very important feature of this, and that's why this is actually taken very seriously from this aspect, because A.J. Droge has gathered a lot of relevant information which are usually not available in other Quran translations. The annotations that we are talking about provide further information on parallel text. This is very unique addition, parallel text from the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament. We should not be confused by this, because as we know and we believe that Islam means we believe in all the prophets and all the messengers that have been sent down from Adam alayhi salam to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we believe in all the prophets sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if some of the parallel information or matching information are available in Torah, in Old Testament and in New Testament, or the available scriptures, although they are distorted, but these similarities are actually proof in favor of our belief that we believe in all the messengers, in all the prophets sent, because the source is one, the purpose is one, and we are one. So we can relate that, because there are many Quranic verses that we can see that the similar verses are available in New Testament or Old Testament. Annotations negotiate some technicalities and also explain the message meanings of obscure passages. So that is, we can call that a kind of commentary also embedded into the annotations. Okay, number fifth in this title, recent Quran translations, but they are not available online, is the Quran, the final book of God, a clear English translation of the glorious Quran, which was published in 2012, and it was written, or it was translated by William Dawood Peachy and Mane Al-Johani. And as I said earlier, in short we call them Peachy and Johani. So Peachy's research interests are in Ottoman philosophy, English language teaching, and Quranic translations. So what are the main information that we can mention here, or we should mention here and for this work? It was published in 2012, but it was distributed in 2014 for certain reasons. So the primary audience of this translation is, this is very important feature of this work, is literate and sophisticated English native speakers. So this actually translation is not meant for general public. I mean, even for general public among the native speakers, it is meant for this segment of the society. They are the literate, educated, sophisticated. Maybe they have some philosophical, mental makeup as well to understand the message of the Quran. And this work also differs from others due to its appeal to native English speakers. I said, more emphasis on the same point here. And the secondary goal, I mean, after the previous one, second goal is to reach a much wider audience. So this, of course, the commercial purpose is also there. But actually, the translation is based on Pichthal's translation, but with a twist. And what are the twists? Two things are very important. These two translators, they have tried to eliminate the biblical words that have been used in Pichthal's translation, the glorious Quran, and also the modernize his vocabulary. Of course, Pichthal translated in earlier 20th century, so they are of course working in the earlier 21st century. So they try to bring these changes. So basic structure of so basic translation is Pichthal's, but of course they are changing the biblical words and also making the translated text a little for the modern readers, and with the slight or the bigger changes here and there, of course, in vocabulary especially, and some phrases as well. Sixth work is Study of Quran by Sayyid Hussain Nasr. Sayyid Hussain Nasr is a very famous, prominent Muslim scholar and Sufi philosopher in US. Basically, I think he is from Iran, but he's settled in USA. And so this work is a production of 15 different scholars under the supervision of Sayyid Hussain Nasr. And it is designed and published by Harper One, of course, for mass market appeal. We can see that the commercial attraction is very much associated with this, and rightly so, because it is fetching the market. And this team of 15 scholars, they spent 9 years to produce this work. They have also written very informative and excellent essays into this translation, and these are the titles of the essay. The Quran in translation is a very excellent and extensive article. The essay, I must say article, it's not essays, articles actually. I mean the research-based article. The Quranic views of sacred history and other religions, another topic, and also topics, articles on topics like science, law, philosophy, theology, mysticism, arts, human rights, war and peace, death and dying, etc. Of course, within the context of the Quranic verses and Quranic teaching, the way these scholars understood or gathered information from other sources. Another feature of this work is that they provide the appendices of these citations that have been cited in the translation, and a timeline of Quranic events that have been mentioned in the Quran. What are the timeline of these events? And also they have also provided the commentator biographies, and in the end a complete index that of course that guides towards all the major elements of this work. As for the translation is concerned, it is wooden and archaic. It's no, no special effort is evident in this translation. As for the translation is concerned, keeping in view the audience, so it is wooden and archaic. The language is archaic. That actually means trying to be closer to the original text of the Quran. So it's a good only as a bridge to the commentary. The translation is can guide towards the commentary that they have provided. So from the translation, which is a little bit, of course, which bears this or carries these characteristics. From that, if a reader, of course, shifts his attention towards the commentary, then this translation makes a very good sense. Okay, the last one, the seventh one, the Quran by Jane McAuliffe. We have mentioned this scholar when we discussed Pickthall's translation, because she revised Pickthall's translation sometime, I think, I don't remember exactly, but I think in 1950s, she revised the translation of Pickthall. So based on, again, this work is based on Pickthall's work and Pickthall's elevated tone that sounds archaic to contemporary era. And don't forget the work of A.J. Droge that we have just discussed. So she is also, of course, focusing on Pickthall's translation, so making the English more contemporary where there is a need. So that was her, objective. That's why, this work compares bear comparison to earlier efforts of Arafat al-Ashi, who of course published his revision of Iqtal's translation first in 1996 and then 2006. So we see that the Pickthall translation in these three translators, Droge and Alashi and McAuliffe. So they have, of course, we can have a comparison among these translations. So we are comparison to Peachy and Al-Johani. I'm sorry, I think I made a mistake. I actually wanted to refer to Peachy and Al-Johani and not Droge. Of course, Droge's main characteristic is the annotation. So kindly correct this information, and I repeat. So the comparison, is very much relevant among these translators, and I repeat the name. Arafat al-Ashi and Peachy al-Johani's work that's published in 2012, and this 2017's work of Jane McAuliffe, and she has, as I said, she had earlier revised Pickthall's translations. So Pickthall is the main translated text for these people, and they have, of course, benefited a lot from the Pickthall translation and produced their own translation. Now let's see the feminist Quran, this topic. Let's first quickly go into the available translation done by women. So we have 5 translators, Quran translators here. 3, and they have combined their effort in one translation. And this translation is usually, is famous for this Sahih International. It is called Sahih International, the Quran, English meaning and notes, and it was published in 1997. And this, as I said, is produced by 3 American women, Emily Asami and Mary Kennedy and Amatullah Bentley. So the work of these 3 women is known as Sahih International and is available, of course, on online and published as well. The translation is consistently conservative. It's orthodox way of course, translating Quran has been preserved and kept throughout the translation. As for the verse, Surah An-Nisa 34, which is, we will come back to this work after some time, Ar-Rijalu Qawwamuna 'ala An-Nisa. But as for this verse, they adhere to Yusuf Ali's interpretive stance. And I think this point will not be very much clear here, but we want to mention here, because after some time I will relate this to other efforts, including women translation, how to deal with this verse. The second one is the the Holy Quran, Persian and English translation together, and with commentary, of course, which was published in 2006, and this is by Tahireh Safarzadeh, an Iranian poet. She's an Iranian poet, author, and university lecturer, studied in University of Iowa, and authored 10 books on translation theory. So she basically is, her education is originated in translation studies and translation theory, and that's why she has taken the responsibility of producing this gigantic work, translation in two languages simultaneously, and also with commentary. Bilingual translation with extensive commentary, as I said, translation with equivalents of the Arabic original in both Persian and English. And she has made two claims. And first claim is that she's produced the first bilingual translation of the Quran, and I think she is right in her claim number one. And the second claim is the first single author of Quran translation into English by a woman. In this claim, there is a debate, but nevertheless, if we see the dates, publication date, and her work is published in 2006, I think we are forced to accept, and we should accept her, claim in this regard as well. But we will see that the Laleh Bakhtiar's translation, which was published in 2007, but the work was done very, some, years ago, before its publication, 2007. But nevertheless, the point is not the translation, the point is the publications. From that aspect, I think her second claim is also, should be considered and is accepted. No effort to match rhythmic quality of the Arabic in target language. Remember one thing: when the rhythmic quality of the original Arabic text in Quran and it is discussed, it is, in my personal view, as a humble student of translation, it is not a negative aspect. Actually, it is a kind of a feature which should be brought into light. So don't take it that, because the tone here is as if this is something negative or a shortcoming. Sure, it is a shortcoming, but it's not negative. We can discuss this point in detail in our, of course, session when we have, inshallah. The prose is often formal, so translation is very formal, and she has no readership outside Iran, so that's mean the native readers, the English speakers, they did not pay attention to this translation too much. Okay, the third translation, but it's a fifth woman translating the Quran, the Sublime Quran, published in 2007 by Laleh Bakhtiar. It's American, again the American based Iranian scholars. I think she was a famous psychologist or psychiatrist, yes, and she has translated, and she was keen to produce the first English translation of the Quran by an American woman. Just like Safarzadeh that we have just discussed in the previous slide, she was also aiming at to produce the first English translation of the Quran by an American woman. But we have seen that that a work was published in 2006 before her. So she distinguishes between formal and dynamic equivalence. Let me very quickly tell you what does this formal and dynamic equivalence mean. Formal equivalence means that the translator tries to bring the formal meaning of the words, being or trying to be nearer, close to the original text, whether the translated text conveys the meaning or does not. But as for the dynamic equivalence is concerned, it is the opposite of that. That is, the translators try to understand the text and also, of course, understand and have the impact of this text on his translators, on his mind and heart, and tries to communicate or transfer this meaning, this impact on his or her mind and heart into the target language. That is called dynamic equivalence. Very briefly, but there's a complete theory behind it. So she opts for formal, mostly for formal equivalence, resulting in literary translation. And of course, formal equivalence there is a difficulty from the reader point of view to easily understand a translation which is very close to the formal equivalence. So when she tries to that, she gets help from or imitate actually the style and wording of A.J. Arbery. Okay, but her work is less than eye-catching feminist rendition of the Quran in English. That means a woman is translating, but she is not adopting feminist approach for her translation. I think this because we are going to discuss this separately when we come to the verse 34 of Surah number 4, Surah An-Nisa. So we I think wait some time. Okay. Now the we have I think feminist Quran. We want actually to go to this one, the most contested verse. And before we go to this, let's take this question. The question is: are female translators or scholars of the Quran, are they also feminist in their outlook? I mean, when they translate certain verses of Quran, especially related to the women, so do they adopt the feminist outlook or approach for translating these verses into English? This is a question. Because as you know, Quran of course contains and provides a lot of injunctions for men, and some of the injunctions are related to specifically for women. And when when these verses containing the injunctions or orders or rules for the woman are translated into English, so there are lot of questions. Answer to these questions, the question is: are all the scholars of female, they are feminist in their outlook? The answer is ambiguous. We cannot categorically say yes, or we cannot categorically say no. But nevertheless, before we go further, let me tell you that we find the influence of womanhood when the women are translating Quran, and especially the verses that are related to women. We in this lecture we will discuss only one verse. Anyways, no coherent or holistic feminist agenda can be traced in the existing translations. Actually, the question uh, emerges from the Western feministic outlook. Feminism itself is not one thing. The feminism in West, in Canada, is something else. The feminist in Europe is little different. The feminism in the East, I mean the Asian countries, the Chinese feminism is totally different. And now I, as a student of translation, I also hear the Islamic feminism. So feminism is not a homogeneous term. It's a heterogeneous, means it has a lot of meanings, a lot of different variations here and there. So what we find here, that the women translators, they're different in background and approach of women translators, but they share close attention to verses that highlight the woman status. They pay very cautious attention toward the translation of this. And one of them, and most important prominent verse, is this one, which is the Surah An-Nisa, Surah number 4 and verse number 34. So how to translate this is the central issue or contestation, not in women translation or translations done by women, also in all the translations. And here we are just discussing the English translation. So this is the verse, the original text, and I think I would like to mention that in this verse we have three keywords. Although I have given red colors to only two, but let me tell you, the word qawwamuna is also included. So let me first recite the verse. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ar-rijalu qawwamun 'ala an-nisa'i bima faddala Allahu ba'dahum 'ala ba'din wa bima anfaqu min amwalihim. فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن فعظوهن واهجروهن في المضاجع واضربوهن فإن أطعنكم فلا تبغوا عليهن سبيلا إن الله كان عليا كبيرا. So as I said, the three key terms that that create this kind of a challenge for the translators, especially in English language. Qawwamun, and then nushuz, and the third one is idribuhunna. In this slide, we just quickly see how Abdullah Yusuf Ali has translated these three key terms. Qawwamuna, and he has translated protectors. Nushuz is translated by Abdullah Yusuf Ali as disloyalty and ill conduct. Remember his translation. And wadribuhunna, idrib, to beat or lightly. Again, we are just to understand the basic meanings or the basic translation provided by Abdullah Yusuf Ali of these three words. And this is his translation. Of course, I have not given you the a complete translation of the verse, that is the original text is available in the previous slide. But men are the protectors and maintainers of women, because, and the reason has been mentioned, as to those women wallati takhafuna nushuzahunna, it's those women on whose part ye fear disloyalty and ill conduct, that is nushuz. Fa'izuhunna, admonish them, within the bracket, of course, addition first. Next, refuse to share their beds, wahjuruhunna fil madaji, and last, beat them, wadribuhunna, beat them, with this addition by Abdullah Yusuf Ali in bracket, lightly. So Yusuf Ali's rendition of this verse is, which is of course published in 1937 or finished in 1937, is still the dominating, this controversial, dominating translation of this controversial verse. Actually, this requires again a complete, lecture on that, where we can conduct a comparison among the translators. Anyways, so the translation of this verse causes a controversy. Efforts to reconcile social justice for women, which is the challenge. So, because according to this verse, the men are allowed to beat women when the men fear nushuz from that side, and nushuz is translated by Abdullah Yusuf Ali as disloyalty and ill conduct. So, combining two things, disloyalty and ill conduct. So, from the Western point of view, in the modern world, this has raised a lot of questions for the. It's a kind of criticism on Islam. So from that aspect, this causes this controversy, which is still going on. So there are efforts to reconcile social justice for women with scriptural authority in the real and virtual world of 21st century. So the debate continues to echo in this. Again, we come back to Sandow Biggs that I have just mentioned for discussing Thomas Cleary's translation, and American Quran. Of course, he was an artist and not a Quran translator. How he has translated, let's see. So he translates the word shall take care of woman, qawwamuna, shall take care of, so from authority, from a force or an authority which lies in the hands of woman, where the orthodox thinking says that qawwamuna means this one, that the men or the rulers, qawwamun, ar-rijalu qawwamun ala, rulers of women. We have seen previously the protectors by Abdullah Yusuf Ali, and here we see the Sandow Biggs translation, who of course is not translating by himself. He is actually selecting different translations to of course prepare his translation. So men shall take care of, qawwamuna ala nisa, shall take care of, this first. Why this? To reconcile with this 21st century modern life, and to present a moderate face of Islam and Quran towards these Western people. As for those who have reason to fear rebellion, not disloyalty, compare this, reason to fear rebellion and disloyalty and ill conduct, where we have seen Abdullah Yusuf Ali translate the word nushuz as disloyalty and ill conduct, but here one word has been used for rebellion. And a lot of debate is accumulated around this word in the traditional commentaries, and also of course among the modern scholars. So admonish them, no problem. Remove them to beds apart, no problem. And then wadribuhunna, and which literally means beat them, as we have seen in Abdullah Yusuf Ali's translation, with the addition of lightly within the bracket. Here Sandows opt for the restrain them, a kind of, detainment, a kind of, putting restrictions and so on. وَاضْرِبُوهُنَّ. And of course, the scholars, and I'm not a scholar but a student of translation and Arabic language, I also wonder on this translation, because the word وَاضْرِبُوهُنَّ, whatever we try to interpret this word, cannot be translated as restrain them. For this word, we are talking about the this lexical item in the Arabic language. Anyways, this is what Sandow's Birk, and we have discussed the motives behind Sandow's Birk is to create a kind of coexistence and tell the American people that, see, the Quranic teachings are not very much dangerous for you. Don't take Muslims as they are terrorists, and they are also part of our society, and so on and so forth. That was his personal uh, objectives for producing this wonderful work. So Big shows himself to be a careful reader as well as creative artist. So we have seen the creativity here, but here they restrain them for Vadribuhunna. I think this creativity is out of context. His translation reveals his own understanding of what the Quranic message should be, not, what is that should be, especially in the case of this verse, is that the message is not severe and harmful to one being admonished. I mean, it's not very much severe, like beating or scourging or slapping on the face and so on. So a bold reinterpretation, demonstrates an insight. This is a very bold step towards the, treating the Quranic text, translating the word "vadribuhunna" as restrain them, which is larger than Bake's other choices in American Quran. It's a kind of criticism on Bake translation choices from the previous translations. Let's see, the one of we have discussed 5 women translators, and in this we see that Laleh Bakhtiar, whom we have known, we have some information about her, how she has translated these keywords in this verse, الرجال قوامون. So she says men are supporters. So see, from the rulers and from those who have authority on women, from protectors with Abdullah Yusuf Ali, and of course, if we scan or take the translation of other translators, we find other varieties. But from there, we are reaching here with this woman, and we find that a feminist outlook is evident here. The supporters of wives, and the reason is, of course, because the bima faddala ba'dahum ala ba'd, advantage over others. So the word advantage is also very interesting, but we are not going to discuss this in this lecture here. Let's come to the word nushuz. So see, the word nushuz translated by Abdullah Yusuf Ali as disloyalty and ill conduct. Disloyalty and ill conduct, whereas the Laleh Bakhtiar used the word resistance. See, the word resistance is very mild, is very we can say that the intensity of the word nushuz, which means, of course, this literally, which means disloyalty as well, and ill conduct both, it has been minimized, marginalized, and it has brought down to the meaning of resistance only. Okay, it's very interesting, but it's a feministic translation of this term, as we have seen supporters as well and resistant. The most interesting is the last one, وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, and this part has been translated by Laleh Bakhtiar as go away from them, وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. So instead of beat them with some addition within the bracket or interpretation lightly or whatsoever, of course, but she is preferring one of the meaning of daraba, which of course is available in the Arabic language, although it is a very remote meaning, but it is there. So she is not like the Sandow's Birk's translation, which has no you know which is no base in the language, Arabic language. So she prefers the go away from them instead of beat them, scourge them, splash them, or whatever the hard and the intense meaning that is embedded in the word daraba. So I think the the women translators, the three women, those who have translated Sahih International and the translation by Safarzadeh in English and Persian both with the commentary. If we minus them, but the Laleh Bakhtiar's approach is, we can say, is very much is a feminist approach, and in her translation of Quran, and especially in verses where the modern questions are faced, and especially in the Western world and in America. Okay, dear students, with this we end this lecture. Take very good care of yourself. Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum.